A film I watched this week was Soldier Blue, the 1970 revisionist western, directed by Ralph Nelson and starring Candice Bergen and Peter Strauss. It starts in what feels like a fairly standard way for a western of old Hollywood. It's about a wagon train accompanied by soldiers traveling cross country, but is attacked by Cheyenne forces, the only survivors being a young woman being returned from Cheyenne captivity to a nearby fort where her military fiancé is waiting, and a young private who managed to get away in the melee. They travel cross country to get her back to her family, but along the way they encounter various obstacles, including hostile Native Americans and a gun running traveling salesman. But along the way they also experience a degree of disconnection regarding their attitude to the First Nations. The soldier believes that Americans have the right to expand, to civilize the natives, to civilize the savages that they believe populate the continent, whereas the woman is much more open, that she has much more awareness of the situation and the brutality that the native tribes face against the white man. This culminates in a sequence towards the end, which we're actually warned about in an opening prologue, a violent, extremely graphic sequence in which a troop of American soldiers conduct mass murder against the Cheyenne, killing women and children, committing rape and graphic scenes of mutilation, which I was genuinely shocked by. For 1970, this must have been unimaginable. But this is, in fact, a real event. The film leads up to this genuine event, the Sand Creek Massacre, which you can read about, and which even at the time was felt to be an almost unconscionable atrocity. The film is very much trying to reprocess ideas of American land to present a far more intelligent and nuanced portrait of the situation, where it's the white settlers who are the aggressors and it's the native tribes who are defending themselves. We're never shown the Cheyenne to be acting in anything other than self-preservation, whereas it's the whites who believe that they have a moral obligation to civilize the land and mass murder anyone who disagrees with them. Candice Bergen's character, I thought, was fantastically well sketched. It was a brilliant performance of someone who is coarse and uncouth, but with a strong, powerful conscience. Peter Strauss, as the soldier, is also very good as someone who is gradually awakening his own conscience as he falls in love with her. Donald Pleasance as the traveling salesman only appears in a few scenes and is quite an eccentric performance, complete with moth-eaten top hat and big false teeth. He does look a lot like Dick Emery has suddenly dropped into the movie. But the comedy value is then immediately diminished when he becomes violent and threatening. And as I say, towards the end of the film, the tone changes rather sharply from being a more contemporary take on traditional westerns into being something graphic and frightening and genuinely shocking in its violence. I can't imagine what audiences must have thought in 1970. It was a major hit in the UK. It was the third highest grossing film of the year, even though it was largely overlooked in the US, I think because it was a bit too sensitive, a bit too touchy for the times. Nelson had a track record of making challenging material. He previously directed Sidney Poitier in Lilies of the Field, and here he's again pushing the boundaries, pushing the envelope as to what is acceptable in terms of making a very bold and forthright statement about race and violence and white aggression. I thought it was a fascinating film, very interesting and engaging, very entertaining on a superficial level much of the time, but genuinely fascinating, and it really gave me some food for thought and some reading to do about the Sand Creek Massacre later on and what happened to the people involved. Its legacy persisting to this day. Soldier Blue is a very strong film, very highly recommended indeed.